Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So there's a weapon out there that my Warlock friends in particular have gotten a lot of use out of, I'd say. The Osteostriga. This weapon is forged from the resonant engine that you can find in the Enclave on Mars, and of course it's the same resonant engine that we used to craft the Enigma. And to say that this thing is powerful is a dramatic understatement. This thing is devastating. With the Catalyst, it can chew through big targets and small targets alike in a matter of seconds, but you see, there's a way that you can make this thing even more devastating because it synergizes directly with the Warlock exotic known as Necrotic Grips, to make those explosive poison bursts even more deadly as they spread like a plague through the entire crowd. This is all well known to Destiny veterans. I don't need to explain the gameplay mechanics of that to you. There's other great channels out there who do exactly that. But what you might not know is that there's lore that connects these two exotics as well, and it's from some of Destiny's most terrifying elements, and that is what we're going to dive into today. So what is the connective lore tissue, that thread that ties both this exotic, Necrotic Grips, and the Osteostriga together? Well, if you've got an understanding of Destiny's lore, then you might be able to see the way that Osteostriga connects to the lore of a certain infamous hand cannon. Yes, this is related in a sense to Thorn. And how can we tell? Well, for starters, look at it. If Weapons of Sorrow have an aesthetic that we see on Thorn, then you can bet your bottom dollar that this is a Weapon of Sorrow too. Thorn's baby brother, perhaps. But there's more to a Weapon of Sorrow than merely a gruesome aesthetic, so let's go over what they are super quickly. The Weapons of Sorrow are best described by a really simple idea. They are human implements of war that have been corrupted and twisted by hive magics. This is best explained in the old Grimoire card for Necrochasm, one of the two best confirmed Weapons of Sorrow. And I say best confirmed for good reason. Whilst there are some question marks over certain other weapons, Necrochasm and Thorn are the two Weapons of Sorrow that are absolutely confirmed. The Crota's End and King's Fall weapons sometimes fall into that category of maybe Weapons of Sorrow, although I don't think they are. The Crown of Sorrow weapons and the weapons from the Season of the Hunt kind of do, but I feel like that's just confusing because they're all covered in hive runes. Bad Juju, Touch of Malice, Whisper of the Worm, and Malfeasance are sometimes counted as Weapons of Sorrow, and I imagine there are going to be people out there who are saying that Parasite counts too. And for the record, all of those weapons that I've just mentioned, with the exception of Thorn and Necrochasm, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. No matter what I've previously said on the topic, I think if we're going by the strictest and purest definition, they are not Weapons of Sorrow. Aside from the fact that some of these weapons do not qualify as human implements of war, and aside from the fact that there seems to commonly, with Weapons of Sorrow, be a greater emphasis on things that really pull together the weapon's entire aesthetic, I feel as though there is a bigger thing that also outwardly defines a Weapon of Sorrow, and it's that every Weapon of Sorrow seems to have an unnatural hunger. Maybe the only close exception to this is Bad Juju, but even then, I struggle to say if that's hive magic or just a keen understanding of the sword logic that's twisted it. Thorn is the first and clearest example of a Weapon of Sorrow. The original weapon was known as the Rose, and it was wielded by a titan known as Razel Azir. Razel took up the name Dredgen Yor, a name that would live in infamy and would leave a trail of destruction through the wilds of Earth, gunning down innocent civilians everywhere, from small bars and outlets here and there to fully established towns like the famous town of Palamon. This, of course, would all come to a close when eventually he was gunned down by the fabled Shin Malphur, the wielder of the last word, or second wielder. But when Shin gunned down Dredgen Yor at Dwindler's Ridge, there was something that was passed on to Shin, a legacy of thorns, and a terrible truth that in the last few moments was recognized by Shin. Darkness approached, and Shin realized perhaps what Razel, underneath all of the terror and all of the hunger, had been trying to teach him all along. That darkness would not be stopped by light alone. And so, Shin acted on this dark intent. He created an organization known as the Shadows of Yor, and was hell-bent on teaching open-minded guardians to control and use the power of darkness for good. He did this under another name, Zaya Orsa, who would come to be known by the moniker of Dredgen Vale. While this happened, he would keep tabs on those that strayed within his organization, the Shadows of Yore. And if they went too far, he would reappear as Shin Malphur and would silence them. The Shadows of Yore under Shin Malphur and his counterpart Tebben Grey would create new Thorns, each with power that was similar to that of the old hated Guardian Killer, although nothing close to the original's power. Whilst the original Thorn was hidden away by Shin Malphur and was left behind for us to find and eventually turn into the Lumina, these new Thorns can still be found out in the wild. It's not impossible that you might have found one yourself. In fact, I imagine that a few of you are quite well practiced with it. One such weapon clearly fell into the hands of the Vanguard, and they wished to conduct testing on these new Thorns to ascertain its potency and power. The Thorn design generally is one that is often only whispered of and not well studied, and so this Thorn that was recovered was codenamed Artifact H349, and the Vanguard tasked an EXO researcher known as Janna 14 along with a team of other researchers to investigate the object. This is a log from their research, showing some key moments where the project began to fall apart. This is displayed in the lore tab for the necrotic grips, and I promise you, this does lead us on a necessary path to Osteo-Striga. Project Day 2. I just got my first look at Artifact H349. It's heavier than expected. More than a few people questioned if we should even study something with such a dire legacy. But if we can't understand our enemy's tools, then we leave ourselves vulnerable to them. Project Day 5. Ran our first test on the artifact's, let's call them necrotic properties. We used cattle. They were large enough to survive the initial discharge. The results have been upsetting. No more animal testing. Project Day 30. Spectral analysis is back, and it's got nothing. The artifact doesn't operate like traditional hive tech, which is our closest analog. A cult of deranged fanatics can mass-produce knockoffs, but we can't even tell you what it's made from. Project Day 31. We had an accidental discharge. Caro, a lab tech over in 4B. Human, so this is going to be it for him. We've got someone staying with him as the corruption spreads. At the very least, there's so much more to study now as we watch his unfortunate deterioration. He's been babbling since it hit his central nervous system, saying, "I'm reborn," or variations thereof. I think he almost sounds happy. Day 39. The Vanguard forbade post-mortem, but a few of us couldn't stomach the idea of Caro's sacrifice being in vain. The results have been insightful. Off the record, I'm keeping a few tissue samples. It almost feels like having him around again. Project Day 41. We began the day with another moment of silence for our lost colleague. Too bad he's not around to appreciate it. Project Day 45. We kept thinking about H349 as a destroyer, but it's more sophisticated than that. I mean, with a normal gun, it's just boom, done. H349, on the other hand, is deadly, not destructive. Much like a viper, its bite does not bring about instant death. Instead, its venom cajoles, it co-opts your beating heart into a death clock, ticking down your last moments. Your own pulse kills you. Death may be slow and agonizing for its victim, but for the viper, time is an amenable trade for efficiency. Project Day 51. Yaniv has been crying a lot lately. We must accept that tragedies happen. It's a hard lesson to learn. Project Day 65. Another accidental discharge today. We realized that yours little creation is hungry, so we fed it more. It certainly performs in exchange. The activity is intriguing after it feasts. I've been able to follow Yaniv's degradation with a more analytical mind than when we lost Caro. I have to say, the process is so elegant. The science involved almost seems poetic. It may be reproducible. Just imagine how much I could have learned if the scanners were all active at the time. Project Day 77. Another accidental discharge. This time, I ensured the scanners were running beforehand. Audio logs of Warlock and researcher Janna 14, salvaged after evacuation. So if you've been using necrotic grips and noticed that at the very center of them is some decayed and clearly necrotic skin, you can understand now that you've probably been carrying around Karo's remains the whole time, and those remains hold the same necrotic power as Thorn does. But you see, since then things have clearly escalated. We see Janna 14 reappear in the lore tab for the Osteostriga, and it's frankly pretty alarming. I'll read it to you now, but I want you to all understand something first. When Dredgen Yor was at his most unhinged, and when he performed some of the most thoughtless acts of violence against innocents, he told his victims that his weapon, the Thorn, was hungry, and that even though they, as humans, had barely a spark of light, they could at least be something perhaps that could satiate his weapon's hunger. Keep that hunger in mind. Pardon us. It just seems like he's always hungry. When I first became a mother, I didn't realize how much time would just be spent feeding him. Do you mind? Thank you. No, he doesn't look much like me, I know. There are a lot of orphans these days. I heard him crying from... oh my. It seems like half a world away. It was chance, honestly. I never thought of myself as a parent, but caring for another little life, it's taught me so much. May I? Sorry, I don't know why I'm sharing so much with you like this. You just seem easy to talk to, and becoming a mum has really given me a lot more insight into the little connections between people. I used to focus so much on my work. I actually lost a few friends over it. Oh, shh, there we go. That's right. Growing babies need their calcium. Now, I can see what matters. The beauty in small things and quiet moments, in watching others light up when they see him, in the way meeting new people broadens him. I had another child, you know. That was before. I didn't keep him safe. It's for the best. He's safe now. Besides, it means I can appreciate this little one so much more. Just the two of us. I love my little Striga. And he's always so hungry. Case 620102. Suspect identity Janna 14. Status at large. Evidence identifier number 303. Audio device. Recovered adjacent to dismembered body. Ribs excised. So Janna 14 is now raising the Osteostriga as a child. Yeah, not exactly the best motherly figure, but I don't know, it's quite the kid you've got there. Keep in mind for just a moment as well that the Osteostriga is clearly a new weapon of sorrow, and that leaves us with a lot of questions. But there is an assumption that we can make from all this, which is that someone has discovered the hive magics and rituals necessary to create a weapon of sorrow, or the shadows of Yor are active again and are making new weapons. This is something that we can see thanks to the flavor text that you see on Osteostriga, and that flavor text shows us this. Victory is not in the unmaking of an enemy, but in the remaking of an enemy into your blade. The ninth understanding, seventh revision of sorrow. For context, this is different from the original ninth understanding in the seventh book of sorrow, which reads, "Do not linger on the coming embrace, your unmaking is yours alone, a solitary journey devoid of peace." This is what's listed on the Thorn in Destiny 2, if I'm not mistaken. And more so than that, it's not the same as what's listed on the Thorn in Destiny 1. That's the better known line of to rend one's enemies is to see them as objects hollow of thought and meaning. I think that's it, at least. If we're to understand this, then the seventh book of sorrow is being actively revised by someone, And more so than that, it's being used to open the door to new degrees of corruption and to create new weapons of sorrow. And so this opens up a whole ream of questions. Who's doing this? How did the Striga manage to call out to Janna in particular? Was it thanks to her encounters with the necrotic grips? More so than this, I think there's an even bigger question. Are we only just seeing the beginning of all of this? Are there more weapons out there like Osteo-Striga, or are there perhaps dozens or hundreds or thousands of them out there that we just don't know about? And so this is where the flood of questions really comes in. Does Janna find this person eventually? Is there a creator of such terrible things? Is there a mother or father of sorrow out there creating these children? Are they a tool of Xivu Arath? Have they been enlightened by our interactions with the darkness through stasis? Is there more to dark power here than we simply understand? Can it be broadened and better understood as something new? With all of this, one key question sits with me above all others. If all of this is clearly developing, I wonder what Shin is doing right now. Shin has kind of acknowledged at the end of the quest line surrounding Lumina, Thorn, and the Last Word that his time is sort of passing, and that Guardians like us now need to take the next steps. But with Janna on the loose and someone experimenting with the Books of Sorrow, and in particular the tomes required to create new weapons of sorrow, Guardian killers, and terrible weapons of awful darkness, I can't imagine that the old gunslinger would just so easily sit back and do nothing if he knew of all this. The question, of course, is does he know? And if he does, what's his next move going to be? A trail of hunger left from a weapon of sorrow is very easy to trace. Who knows if Shin is on that trail or not? Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, go ahead and remember to leave a like. Of course, you can also hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. You guys get it in particular. Comment section, let me know what you think is going to happen with the Osteo-Striga. Is this more of a passive one-off story that Bungie's going to be telling through some lore, or is there a possibility that this rises up into a different place? Keep in mind that there were mainline exotic quests that occurred when all sorts of things like The Last Word and Thorn and Lumina came about, and the Weapons of Sorrow and Shadow of Yore featured prominently in them. Would you like to see this storyline revisited and expanded? Do you reckon it's been enough time? I personally would love to see more on it, but then again, maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Per audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.